Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain and welcome back. Now, I mentioned some stuff earlier in the week in one video, the one that I did addressing a comment that was left on a video from last May actually, May 2017. So, it's cool to see people finding videos from a while ago and those still being relevant to people, which is what they were supposed to be. So, I'm glad on that. But there was one thing which I wanted to kind of look at a little more closely today, but from a slightly different angle, and that was the idea of giving up the drive to win all the time. We always want to fight, we always want to win, and it doesn't help anybody. In that video, I made a point of saying that it doesn't help because when it's not factual, when it's just I'm going to fight to win because I'm going to win the argument, not necessarily based on fact, but just because you're going to shout louder or whatever else, or because it's entirely subjective, which is better, Star Wars or Star Trek. I mean, at the moment they both suck thanks to their most recent iterations to a degree, or at least their continuation looks pretty crappy. But in regards to the argument around which is best, there are always hard feelings in those arguments because everyone's trying to fight to win, but there's no winning. Because it's all subjective and it doesn't make any damn sense. There are no facts attached to it. And so this is the thing that I wanted to focus on today, and that is picking sides. And picking sides is something that we see everywhere nowadays, especially in politics. Politics is just rife with tribalism. And it's damaging. It's so damaging. But when you've got the extremes playing identity politics, and then in from that you've got people playing the politics around kind of individual rights, and then slightly further in from them again you've got this kind of mainstay core party kind of left wing right wing divide, and moving in a fair bit more from either of those you've got the centre, and the centre may very well be people who either don't care, people who are more appreciative of varying sides and different perspectives, people that have more information to stand apart. And it makes no sense to have that wide divide with the separations along it at all, considering that usually those discussions and everything that's going on there around peoples and societies, entire countries, entire groups of countries. And so having those divisions and those arguments just doesn't make any sense, because it makes the whole thing just malfunction. It doesn't work anymore. It causes people harm. And so when it comes to picking sides, I want to put something to you guys. And this is something that I've observed time and time again, but I had to reiterate it the other day, so it's something I wanted to bring up. And that is, when it comes to picking sides, it's not usually a case of someone actually picking a side. A lot of times people are thrown towards the other side as soon as they say something that the side that they may very lean more towards doesn't like. For instance, I'm in terms of my kind of natural political inclinations, I'm liberal and libertarian. Not hugely so, but I'm not in the centre that I focus on being in my own kind of demeanour, in my efforts to be who I want to be. I try to take that middle ground. But naturally, my natural inclinations tend to be towards being more liberal and more libertarian in regards to just going, give people their own rights, leave people alone. There have to be limits, but those limits can be pretty widely spaced apart. If someone wants to do X, Y, and Z with their own body, fine. If someone wants to say something, fine. They let them say whatever they want. Let them do whatever they want to themselves. If people want to be with certain other people, then fine, let them be with whoever they want to be with. As long as it's not harming anyone or causing any kind of catastrophe, then fine, let it happen. Though that's where my mind sits a lot of the time. But then I actively force myself to be in that middle space to take in as much information as possible, because sometimes my inclinations just go, yeah, let people be who they want to be and do what they want to do. If you're going to try and police language, police sexuality, and kind of shame people for for attaching themselves to one thing or another, then all you're ever doing is causing divisions and hurting yourself. It's like there are some places where, yeah, those people that try and attach themselves to certain things, cults or ideologies based on falsehoods and things, yeah, those people are going to go and cause real harm. But here's the thing: those people tend to be the minority. There are people that kind of straddle the line between nut job and reasonable, and sometimes they can be difficult to deal with. But a lot of the time, the real crazies show who they are, and they run off into the distance, and kind of you're sat there. But the one thing that I want to point out is that picking sides is about reactions. And it's about reaction time in particular. So let me explain. With me sat in the centre, like deliberately making sure that I'm sat there in the middle of left and right and kind of authoritarian and libertarian, me making sure that I'm sat at that pinpoint, that top of the mountain in the middle, that means that I tend to go, okay, well, let's look at all the sides. We've got these 4 quadrants. Let's look at what's coming from each of them on each topic. Yeah? And that way it's easy to see which things make sense and which things don't, because you've got information and things to compare to. But when people don't, and they have the differences, but they don't try and look for the other side of what's going on. They don't try and take themselves out themselves and go, oh, well, what would that person be thinking when they've said that? Where are they coming from? It becomes a case of reactions, purely reactions. But then, how do you know which side you are going to be cast as? Especially if you're in the centre like me, it becomes a case of whichever side reacts the slowest will blast you and suggest that you are part of the other side. For instance, you come and you have a conversation with a group of people. You take part in a conversation like the ones that I've mentioned on this channel before in regards to Brexit, for instance. So the people on the Remain side, where I was sat initially in the middle, waiting to see what the information was from either side. The Remain side were throwing me statistics, stuff from credible individuals, lots of things that would be particularly useful in making my judgment. And there were an awful lot of people that I already had reason to respect due to their prior work, due to seeing them and interacting with them through other things, all of those kind of things on the Remain side. On the Leave side, there were lots of things that didn't add up. There were lots of things that didn't make any sense. There was lots of emotion and stuff that was just subjective claims. Lots of contradictions, and it left me going, okay, well, I'm going to vote in that direction. But even before the vote happened, it wasn't it wasn't my vote that cast me to that side initially. It was the people who were slower to actually provide the information, the arguments, the useful topical stuff, which, by the way, a lot of them still haven't done, that drove me in that direction. But now let's take a slightly different view of this. If you're looking at identity politics, so you've got people on the right yelling and screaming about how identity is important, but kind of, no, there are only these things, there's only this, there's only God, there's, you can't mess around with all of this, and homosexuality is wrong, for instance. Let's go with the sexuality thing because it's the most nonsensical one. And so you've got someone over there on the right going, homosexuality is wrong. And you've got someone sat in the middle going, I mean, it just is what it is. Who cares? And then you've got the people on the left, the extreme left, who are at times just attacking people who are straight for being straight. And so so then though it becomes a case of the person in the middle has no real stake. They are there potentially taking part in the conversation, but they don't have a stake in which way it really goes. They've very, very obviously said, I don't care. Let people do what they want. Yeah? Sexuality has no impact on anyone other than the person that you are being sexual with. In which case, not an issue. So let's say the right respond faster. And they go, yeah, all right, fine. You make your point, but we're disagreeing with you. Or they just go, yeah, sure, whatever. And they just dismiss you quickly. And then the left go, oh no, but you're a person that's sat there in the middle, and you've already interacted with the people on the other side, and that means you must be on their side. You must be bad. You're on their side, and you're disagreeing with us, and all the rest of it. You see this time and time again in this kind of identity politics as well, but it happens everywhere, even amongst groups of friends, and it just becomes a case of lots of people trying to start fights and picking sides, drawing battle lines, when there's nothing to fight over. You know, it's a case of different opinions, different sides. There was no fight, and then the people who cast that individual in the middle over to the other side tend to just be the people that either take longer to talk to, longer to convince, longer to respond, or they see some kind of association, pre-existing association, because they've taken so long, between that person who doesn't give a shit, that person in the middle, that person in the centre, and the person on the other side. And so they will cast them over to the other side and make an enemy of them, because it's simpler and easier to throw people in based on those kind of associations than it is to try and appreciate the different points of view. And I wanted to say this because, again, we've got a whole load of stuff that's been coming out over North Korea, for instance, and Iran as well recently, where people have been taking different sides, having different arguments, and a lot of it boils down to, really and truly, there are no two sides in this. There are different perspectives, but when it actually boils down to it, it's people just not being willing to discuss either way. Yeah? It's not and it's usually the people who are yelling the hardest about who's the enemy who have been the slowest to respond. You know, as I mentioned in the video earlier in the week that I did on Trump and his response to the Iran deal, where he's now pulling out of it, and kind of reimposing his own agenda on the whole thing. It kind of stands out to me as going, yeah, but look, everyone else had settled this, and now he's taken the longest to respond, and he's the one throwing stones. He's the one calling out which enemy is which, regardless of what anyone's saying to him. And so it's a case of, yeah, it's just it's about reaction times, and usually the person who is taking the longest time to react, or the longest time to get the information into their thick skull, or whatever else, they are the people who are the ones drawing battle lines. As per Brexit, the people who are clinging to it most at the moment are the people who were on the Leave side, the people who had that stuff to fling out in the first place. Yeah? And they're still repeating the same old messages over and over again, when the messages from Remain have adapted, the messages from the groups still wanting at the very least to remain in the single market have adapted and progressed, and the Leave sides haven't, even though they have come up against numerous pitfalls, been found to be lying on various things, and had all kinds of other trouble. They've not adapted, they've not changed, because they're taking so much time over this entire situation compared to the other side that is focused on adapting and looking at more of a well-rounded kind of part of the situation. You know, it's seeing that the initial reaction to the entire situation had people being very slow about it and all the rest of it on the Leave side, because it was just their stance that they took. People were looking up stuff after the referendum more so than they were beforehand, because they were being so slow to act. It's that speed of reaction that counts an awful lot when it comes to who's picking sides. But in a lot of instances, because empathy is in very short supply in the world at times these days, once one person picks a side, draws a battle line, then the people that are left on the other side of it tend to draw arms, and it doesn't help anybody. So the one thing I just wanted to make this video really to say was, as much as I've rambled and gone through all of this stuff, before you start picking fights, before you start drawing lines in the sand and deciding who's on your side and who's on their side and whatever else, just take a moment and try and appreciate kind of the other point of view. See where the other point of view is coming from. Engage in more of a discussion and see how things go, because a lot of the time those battle lines that have been drawn don't really exist. They don't make sense. So just a little bit of empathy goes a long way when it comes to avoiding these kind of things. Which, again, relating back to the video I did earlier this week, you know, it prevents that those hard feelings and the worsening of further interactions. It's a thing that just goes, yeah, okay, well, no one needs to win here. There's no win condition. There are no sides. We're just looking at what works and what's real. Yeah? It boils it down more simply, and it works better. But anyway, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I know this has been more of a rambly video, but it was just something that's been in my head that I felt was pertinent, not just to the videos that I did earlier in the week, but just generally, you know. We don't always need to win. We don't always need to pick fights. And some of the people who decide that they need to win and then they need to pick fights are usually the people that also don't have as much support behind them. It's the yappy dog kind of syndrome that drives them to kind of impose on others. And that's another problem for another time, I guess. But anyway, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the video later. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the video later. Take care.